Hey guys, this is the second part of how I made the brow. I'm going to show you how I made the mold out of Ultra Cal 30 and how I filled it with gelatin. So first of all, you're going to build some walls to contain the Ultra Cal around your mold. So I'm just using water-based clay, one that's pretty easy to kind of slice up and smooth together, I guess. I just got this from the art store. And you're going to build up walls that are thick enough to hold up against the weight of the Ultra Cal and just make sure that the bottom is sealed so it doesn't leak out anywhere. Once that's finished, I'm going to spray it all with crystal clear acrylic, which will help with the release, and then I'm going to give it 15 minutes to dry. Once that's dry, I'm going to spray it with a release as well, which is the rapid release spray. Now for the Ultra Cal this time, I actually properly measured out the correct amount of water and Ultra Cal. I'm wearing gloves, I have a dust mask on, and I'm wearing safety glasses, so take that. And the way Ultra Cal works is it will kind of harden up over the course of, however many minutes, maybe like 10 or 15. I could be making that up. So I'm trying to brush on the first layer now where it's still quite thin to get it into the layers, but you can see it's kind of too thin, and especially with the release and the acrylic, it's just kind of beating up. But I keep trying anyway. After a few minutes pass and it's thickened up, I'll remix it, and I'm like, oh, this looks a bit thicker and more like cream, so I can put another layer down. Then I'll wait for that to thicken up even more, and then I'll put another layer down until it's like kind of quite buildable and will hold its shape. I just keep building it up in layers basically as it thickens. If you can get it as flat as possible on the back, it does make your job easier. Otherwise you can sand it down. So I waited for this to dry. I think I gave it a few hours before taking away the clay and pulling it off the sculpture, and it came off clean. The sculpture stayed on the tile. And then I gave it, I think maybe 24 hours or something like that. I left it until the next day to file it down, any kind of weird edges or anything. And then I heated it up in the oven on the lowest possible setting. I think it's about 60 degrees Celsius on my oven for 20 minutes. And this will help the gelatin to get into all the details and not cool down too fast. So as a release, I'm putting Vaseline into all of it and using a cotton tip to kind of help me get into all the crevices, and then wiping off any excess Vaseline with a tissue. And then afterwards that, I'm also going to spray it with a release spray. And I've heated up my gelatin in the microwave, and I've added a little bit of grease paints to get a skin tone. You can use a few different things in gelatin, like flocking powder as well, with gelatin pigments. And basically I've gotten it like hot, but not so hot that it boils, because boiling isn't good for gelatin. Poured it into the mold, let it settle for a few seconds to try and get the bubbles out, and using this metal filling spatula knife thing, I'm just going over it twice, just to try and get thin edges and take away any excess gelatin. And because stone's quite hard, especially if you leave it enough time to solidify, you can push relatively hard to get quite thin edges. So you need to leave it for maybe half an hour, or you can speed it up by putting it into a fridge. And once it's all set, I'm going to baby powder it to take away any stickiness and to help with the release. And I'm going to find one of the thin edges. I'm going to get my brush underneath and just gently work my way underneath it to take it out of the mold. Yeah, and that's basically how I made my gelatin brow mold. I also quickly go over now how I made the teeth. I'm not an expert in teeth making. I've only done it a couple of times, so it's just going to be basically an overview because I don't really know what I'm doing yet. First of all, I sculpted it out of Siobhan NSP medium on a plaster positive, or of a dental stone positive of my own teeth. And this is what the sculpt looked like. And then I made a silicone dump mold basically, and used the plaster mold with the clay cleaned off with dental acrylic. I used a mix of clear dental acrylic with, I think it was A2 dental acrylic powder, but I think it came out a bit too yellow. I'm thinking maybe B1 coloured acrylic powder might be better, so I might invest in that next time. And what actually happened is that the plaster mould cracked when I was pushing it into the silicone, and the crack had the dental acrylic leak into it, so I couldn't remove the front of the dental acrylic piece, which resulted in it splitting. And because there was that crack through the plaster or through the dental stone positive, I couldn't really reuse it either. So basically I patched it with a little bit of acrylic freehand and then sanded it down once it was cured. You need to give it maybe about 24 hours to cure, and then you can use a Dremel. So I tried using a Dremel to take away most of the gums and rerun it in Flexacryl to get the gum line, but it came out too thin. So basically I hand painted on the Flexacryl, which you can see on the right hand side here. Once it was all set, I again trimmed down the edges and then painted it using Skin Illustrator paints, and then gave it a nice glossy finish using clear nail acrylic. Yes, that's how I made that pair of teeth, but I've tried different techniques for different things. If you want to learn more about it, there's a tutorial on the Stan Winston School of Character Arts, and you can watch it for free if you use their 3-day free trial. There's also a little bit of a description in Todd Debrasini's book on special effects makeup and how to make teeth. And I've also been to a class by Thomas Supinant about how to make teeth. But there's lots of tutorials around with lots of different techniques. Okay, stop talking. So this is the end of the tutorial. I also linked the sculpting tutorial and the application tutorial. Alright, thanks, bye.